Good morning.
We're going to go ahead and get started. This is a great turnout. Appreciate you coming out. It's a rainy day. Some people don't like to leave home when it's raining and just snuggle down, but I'm glad to see y'all got out here bright and early and joined us. Bright and early for Saturday.
That's not a bad idea.
The rest of the afternoon. But I'm Cindy Tuttle, and I'm the chair of the Historic Saluda Committee. And I'm going to introduce Jack in just a minute. I don't mean to have my back to him, but just wanted to say a few things on behalf of the Historic Saluda Committee as to who we are. Most of y'all probably already know that we operate under the city of Saluda as one of their committees, so we work under their jurisdiction. There's 7 voting members that they appoint, and then we have at-large members as well. We meet the second Friday of every month, except probably, July, for we don't usually meet during the month of Coondog Day. And sometimes in Christmas, but usually it's every month. So some of you all might know what our projects are. Sometimes it's not easy to see because we don't have a bricks and mortar type museum or facility. But we're very, very, very active behind the scenes. We do a lot of things. We're founded on, I guess the foundation has been oral histories. We've been collecting oral histories since 2010. And it's amazing what you learn when you interview people and listen to their version of the story. We don't always verify their version, but we listen to their version and we document that. Oftentimes they'll bring in photographs, and so we scan those photographs and we share them. We have amassed a large amount of digital archives. We do try to share them frequently on our social media. If you follow us on Facebook, you see a lot of stuff that goes out there. So we have a pretty big following on Facebook. If you're not following us, please do. It's Historic Saluda NC. So please follow us. That's where you'll see all kinds of stuff, and a lot of it's exclusive stuff that no one else has seen, possibly, if it comes from a family. So it's really interesting. And also the oral histories that we've recorded can be found on YouTube. Please subscribe. We have a horrible time getting people to subscribe. We've had a lot of views on some of our videos, but people don't want to hit that subscribe button. So y'all know if you're into YouTube, that's a big thing. So we've uploaded recently. We've done 2 professional oral history documentaries that were put out as an actual film and sold as DVD. The first one is general Saluda history, kind of 101 kind of thing. The second one is about the history of Saluda's music, and we're very proud of that one. We put a lot of time and effort into that, didn't we, Martin? Martin was co-producer with me, and it's uploaded now. Used to be you can only see it by buying the DVD. Now you can go online and watch the whole thing, and it's pretty good. Do yeah. A lot of good music, a lot of good. Aaron Burdett, before he became so big, he's in there, so he's kind of like the thread throughout that movie. So anyway, we have an archive room here at the library, and that's where when people make donations, and they do frequently, I love coming up here and going in that room because there's boxes sitting there and I have this full of stuff, and sometimes I don't even know where they came from, but they're family scrapbooks, all kinds of stuff that people like to donate. Our dream is to have a museum someday. Let's see. I think that's about all as far as what we're doing. Today is going to be 2-part. Jack Thomson, no P, like all the Thompsons in Saluda, no P, with Preservation North Carolina. He's going to first start out with a presentation on Historic Preservation 101, and then we're going to open it up to you all. And today's about listening to you, what you feel historic preservation means to you, who should be involved, what we should do. You know, Saluda's a changing. So, you know, let's talk about some ideas. We're putting together a comprehensive plan, and we want the public's involvement with that. And also, too, we want to know what you want to learn about. So if you've got ideas of things you want to learn about, you know, whatever that might be regarding historic preservation, let us know, and we can schedule the next program, because this is a series that we plan to do. Turn it over to Jack. Jack is with the Western Regional Office of Preservation, North Carolina. His predecessor, Ted Alexander, helped us found our committee. He stood beside me when we had public forums and we created what became Historic Saluda Committee and when the city adopted us. They've been instrumental in a lot of our work, and we respect what they do. We refer a lot of people to them. So I'm going to turn it over to Jack.
Hey y'all, good morning. How's everybody doing? Yeah, so I'm the Western Regional Director for the statewide historic preservation nonprofit. I'm also a mountain boy. I was born in Boone. I grew up alternating between Avery County, like Grandfather Mountain area, and Asheville, depending on what the economy was doing at the time. So today, yes, as Cindy mentioned, it's two parts today. First part from me, kind of setting the stage as far as what historic preservation, how it works from the point of view of Preservation North Carolina, and how we try to support local initiatives, local organizations. We are ramping up our outreach and our support of local organizations to try to build a stronger network across the state. As a statewide nonprofit, we can't be everywhere at once, right? And a single staff person covered 35 counties. So it's a lot to do, and we all do better when we work together. So we're working on new local nonprofits in Lincolnton, in Gastonia, and working with commissions and other organizations like the committee here in Saluda to try to give them support as far as how to move forward with some of their programming. For my part, for the first part of today is we're going to talk a little bit about what PNC does in general. We're going to talk about 4 key principles in historic preservation from PNC's point of view. And then we're going to talk about how historic preservationists were really kind of the first environmentalists in our country. The greenest building is the one that's already built. It's often a term that's thrown out there that you may have heard in the past. And so here we go. I'm going to show you a couple examples of our work in the West. This is a jail that's been adaptively reused. It's now an event center that you can go have your wedding reception in the Pokey. One thing that you're going to see that is a thread through our work is that we work almost exclusively with the tangible, the built environment, okay? And so it may be that Saluda and the committee is considering an evolution because they have been working so strongly in more of the ephemeral, the storytelling, the productions that have been done to help tell that story. At PNC, we're very focused on place because we feel like that is the physical manifestation of history. It is our connection to the past. And so that's our approach. The Saluda Committee, to me, in a quick evaluation, it looks like you're going in kind of a hybrid direction, which I would agree with, especially for smaller communities, where it's a combination of a historical association or historical society that is collecting the ephemera, the stories, the letters, the photographs, but also looking at, either because of recent past threats to the built environment or what we may perceive coming down the line as potential threats to the built environment, or an approach to planning within the community that needs to integrate historic preservation in the efforts. This is Ingleside. This is in Lincoln County. I'm going to show you a staircase. A lot of my work is in more of the eastern part of the western region. If you draw a line from Charlotte up to Mount Airy, okay, Mayberry, everything west of that is my area. And so this would be in the more eastern area. We're working with what's called residual churches. So what our nation is seeing is a depletion of a faith-based society, which is leading to churches that aren't being used anymore, churches that aren't being engaged as much anymore. And so that's a key focus of our work as well in communities. How can these churches have a new life? The new life, that terminology is grounded in adaptive reuse, taking a building that was constructed for a very specific purpose and adapting it to allow for a new purpose. Residential, of course, brewery, right, everywhere, but adaptive reuse is that term. The majority of our properties are residential in nature and have remained that way. And so if we're talking about terminology, Let's think about a spectrum, or a linear spectrum, okay? On one side is renovation, and on the other side is restoration, okay? And we're going to talk about the differences. Renovation, restoration, and in the middle is rehabilitation. And that's the sweet spot that we want, okay? Restoration, that's the house museum, right? That's removing the 1950s bathroom from the 1870s farmhouse and putting the outhouse in the backyard, right? And that's restoration. You're taking it back to a very specific period or a very specific point in time, and it doesn't always fit for a contemporary family who would like to have a kitchen and running water in the house, right? So that's more rehabilitation. Now, what in general as Americans we often suffer from in our material culture, pop culture, is renovation, right? This is the Magnolia Channel. This is this urge that Americans feel like once we get a place, it is our responsibility to lift our leg and make our mark on it, right? This is where we take the red brick ranch and we paint it white and we put black windows in and we totally altered, this sense of place from the mid-century. So that's renovation. We are rarely there. We are really trying to aim for that sweet spot of rehabilitation in the middle. It respects the history of the place. It allows for a comfortable occupation of a contemporary family. Does that make sense? People throw the terms around all the time. They mean different things, right? Another residual church. This is a mid-century church, so we're not stuck in one period of time. We evaluate historic properties with a number of different criteria. Sometimes it is scarcity. Sometimes it is age, a survivor. Sometimes it is architecture. This is a mid-century example, and that would be the criteria that we use to work with this. It was a residual church, so it was important for us to help this community find a new use for their church buildings. The church building can still continue to tell a story. We'll keep going here real quick. We do work downtown, preservation easements. We'll talk briefly about today, along with several other tools. In the more intense commercial marketplaces like Charlotte, Asheville, this is in Winston-Salem, Raleigh. These easements, because it's recognized by the federal government and it's embedded in the tax code, it actually provides a financial incentive for preservation. There's a number of different financial incentives we'll touch on today as well. Haywood County. Baltimore School, this is in Cramerton. This is an African-American school during the Jim Crow era. Some of you may have heard the term Rosenwald School, perhaps. Julius Rosenwald partnered with Booker T. Washington to build over 3,000 schools in the segregated South to provide education for the African-American community. The community would raise half the money. Julius Rosenwald, who was the CEO of Sears and Roebuck, by the way, would provide the other half. And it was really the only educational alternative in the Southeast for decades for African-American children. This is a similar model. It's not a specific Rosenwald school. They produce designs for schools, a one-teacher school, a three-teacher school, a four-teacher school, et cetera, et cetera. And so you can go into various communities across the Southeast and you'll see the exact same one-teacher school in Alabama that they have in Mars Hill, North Carolina, for instance. Okay, so the fundamentals, the basics, as I view it, and I'm not an academic, I've been in the nonprofit business for historic preservation for about 25 years now. It's been in Salisbury, North Carolina, which has a pretty good preservation reputation. Asheville, I was there for a decade, kind of going back home again. Briefly worked for local government in Charlotte and am now the Western Director for PNC. So this is my view of it. I really consider myself more of a real estate professional. Not a typical marketplace real estate professional. It's a niche market, and it also has some very specific and precise tools that aren't necessarily adopted or used in the general marketplace. Things like options to purchase, conservation easements, things like that. Okay, so we're going to talk about these four different kind of pillars as I view how to help support the development of historic preservation in communities. So first is the system. And so if you think about how the infrastructure, so to speak, of historic preservation is set up in the United States, it simplifies things if you think about the public movement, those supported by units of government, whether it's federal, state, local, county, etc. And then the private movement, whether that is private developers that turn 4 million square feet of tobacco warehouse in downtown Durham into the American Tobacco Campus, which is wildly popular. That's a private developer doing that. A private nonprofit, right? PNC is a private nonprofit corporation. And we view ourselves in that very specific light because it allows us to have sometimes more flexibility than local governments can have, how they're mandated by ordinance and statute. So let's think about these two different baskets, two different silos. And I hesitate to say silos because they're not always exclusive to each other. So on the public side first, the National Park Service. You know, we're in the mountains of Western North Carolina. We understand the importance of natural resources, and when we think of National Park Service, we think primarily about natural resources. It's easy for him to say. But the Park Service is also in charge of what's known as the National Register of Historic Places. Okay, so it's not just natural resources, it's cultural resources, historic resources. So in our National Register, that's at the national level, at the federal level, on the public side. And there are other, this section right here is the alphabet soup, okay? You've got the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation, ACHP. You've got Preservation Action, which is the lobby. You've got all of this alphabet soup, but to keep it relatively simple, National Register is directly associated with the work of the National Park Service. You go down to the state level on the public side, and you've got the State Historic Preservation Office. So did folks go to the survey meeting in Columbus? Yeah? Okay, so those folks work for the State Historic Preservation Office. Some of you may have met Jennifer Cathy over the years. She's a representative for the State Historic Preservation Office. They administer the federal programs, but they also work on their own programs at the state level. Then let's step down one more, and you've got the local, which tends to be county and municipalities. Generally, you will either have what you have here, which is a Historic Preservation Committee, kind of the grassroots, often somewhat loosely associated with local government, perhaps lacks a specific mandate or lacks the authority by ordinance or statute. And then you have a commission which actually has relatively strong authority through general statute from the state of North Carolina. Nearby communities that have commissions would be Tryon has a commission. Local historic districts is where I'm going with this. Hendersonville, Flat Rock's got a commission. You can have commissions at either a municipal level or at a county level. And I want to specify that because I get a sense with the landscape here that perhaps a county level commission could be beneficial for Polk County. And you know, I'm an outsider coming in. Oftentimes the development of a local commission at the municipal level does require the support of the administration of the town, right? And the leadership of the town. On the private side, National Trust for Historic Preservation. You may have heard of this organization. They're working in Tryon with the Nina Simone House, right? They have a collection of house museums. They lobby Congress. They provide a lot of outreach and support across the country. They can sometimes be a mile wide and an inch deep. But they also tend to focus, they'll do the 10 most endangered properties across the country. And these are really more of the flagship properties for our nation that they're working on. Then you have Preservation North Carolina. We've protected over 900 individual properties across the state. We've got 3 regional directors, West, Piedmont, East, like you do in the state. We're very proud of our work. We're a very transactional organization. We focus a lot on real estate transaction. We do advocacy. We work on policy in Raleigh at the state level with historic tax credits, property tax deferrals. If we have a farmer or a forester in the room, you're getting a deferral on your property taxes because of the farmland deferral or the forestry deferral. We have the same for historic preservation. Then you go down, so that's statewide, local nonprofits. Let's keep breaking it down. So depending on the size of the community, Montford in Asheville has its own neighborhood organization that is a historic preservation advocate, right? And then many communities, depending on the size, will have a Main Street program, downtown Main Street. This is kind of in the economic development vein, using the historic built environment because they recognize, in downtown Hendersonville, the historic buildings set the stage for their downtown economy. There's a reason why Mass General Store puts their enterprises in very specific types of buildings, right? That is a strong part of their marketing piece. Any questions on this? Okay. So let's go on to organize. It's right out of the book for community organization. It's like, who are your citizen volunteers? Identify who those people are that are interested, and many of them are sleepers. Many of them need a little nudge. Sometimes they're newcomers, and they need to get the temperament of the community and dive right in. Sometimes they bring experiences from their other environments with them. The mountains of western North Carolina were full of newcomers, right? Elected officials, in my view, champions of the historic preservation movement need to be influential with elected officials. We would do candidates forums. We would bring the candidates in. We would ask them very specific questions about what their thoughts of historic preservation were, right? And allow them to respond. And then you get them on record, right? And that's helpful moving forward in advancing the mission. You can put administration in here as well, the executive administration of a municipality or county or something like this. A lot of people aren't historic preservationists until they get a good sense of their own mortality, right? I turned 50 this year, so I'm finally kind of entering the club, but for decades, I was this young whippersnapper, like, why are you doing historic preservation? Young people don't do that. That's not true, right? And it's actually, the younger generations are really starting to embrace it more and more. Whether it's a style thing, whether it's this atomic age, mid-century that everybody's in love with, the young kids love it, right? Or if it's a passion for the genuine, experience, and that's what preservation sets the stage for those experiences. Professionals, do we have any real estate agents in the room? I know we're going to have at least 1 or 2. It's Western North Carolina, right? Do we have any attorneys in the room? No? Yeah?
Retired.
Good. Dirt lawyers? Dirt lawyers need to know how important what's a dirt lawyer? That's a closing lawyer. That's a transactional lawyer for real estate, okay? That's a dirt lawyer. They need to know how important historic preservation is in the community. Your real estate professionals need to know. Go ahead and give them a heads up so we don't, surprise them, as has happened in the past in communities. This is all very, very important. Surveyors, building inspectors, or private inspectors. An inspector that's used to inspecting the vinyl village, out in the burbs, does not know how to look at a historic house, right? Code enforcement officials. There's been this huge upsurge in this, we need to abate the nuisance. it's almost as though we've gone back into urban renewal from the, you know, in the 60s. Like, the authorities of local government are sweeping in. I mean, it's really, it's quite shocking in my own region. I have a number of different communities where code enforcement, sometimes it's a mix of code and fire marshal and the planning department. Everything's a nail if you're a hammer, right? And so this abatement issue of derelict buildings is really starting to amplify during my career. It's the most amplified I've seen it in 20 years. So reach out to them and help start develop those relationships. So who's on the committee today? How many committee members do we have here? Raise them high, I gotta count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And how many is the total head count?
We have 7 voting and 5 at large.
Okay. Who has served in the past on the committee? Not currently, but in the past. Okay. Who wants to serve on the committee in the next round of nominations? Who thinks that it's important to provide that kind of citizen input and capital to support this kind of movement in Saluda? Let me ask you this. Does the environment of Saluda rely heavily on its genuine and authentic built environment? Yes or no?
Yes.
Right. So that needs the support from citizen volunteers to build that up. Look, you know, people springboard off of a planning board. They launch, you know, political campaigns. They go to the planning board and then they just go up. You need to kind of think of that almost like for the committee and be influential and have that aspirational approach to it. I think I've been told that there's not an appetite at the local level for the committee to advance through ordinance to a commission level authority. I could be wrong about that, and oftentimes that's just one election away or one change in management or administration. I do offer as an alternative the support or the planning for potential county commission, county historic preservation commission, as an alternative. They can serve a similar purpose, depends on the attitude of the administration in these various units of local government, whether it's at the municipal or the county level. Get them elected, ask them questions first and get them on the record, and engage the professionals we've already mentioned. Newcomers, the easiest way to be from a place is to buy an old house and preserve it. Like, you can be from there real quick if you do that, right? Buying the McMansion in the gated community up on the ridge, that's a real easy way to get isolated pretty quickly, right? So these newcomers can be very powerful resources to the movement. Depending on how the committee is viewed within the larger community, the influence in being able to have a voice in the development plans. Now there's, you know, a goal that's close to completion, I think here is more of a preservation plan sort of approach. But don't let it stand free. Design it so that it gets integrated when there's new looks at how the development ordinance is adopted in the community. Like, you really need to get preservation integrated into the planning side of things, the planning and the development side of things. We don't want to save everything. We don't want to be hysteric preservationists like I have been in the past. But we do want to be able to integrate with the planning and development ordinances as they evolve and adapt. I'm saying two things, same thing two different ways here with the zoning. And then, of course, we just had this moment where, thank you for responding, relative to the importance of historic preservation for the economy of the community. So as you continue to organize, We're already seeing green shoots on the committee with, education series, something like this, something similar to this. In Asheville, my goal was to do 8 events a year that focused either on nuts and bolts like this, or would focus on the story of a neighborhood. We would do, give you a neighborhood, we do Montford, I keep referencing Montford. We do Biltmore Village. How did Biltmore Village adapt over time, and where did it come from when it was on its heels, in the 70s and so forth. But education series, you're strong there too with the oral histories and the video productions and stuff. That I would put that in there. Throw a little carrot out to the community for the folks that do good things, right? The Main Street restaurant or investment banker that moves into the old building and rehabilitates it. A lot of times we're viewed as, again, hysteric preservationists, or we want everything frozen in amber. We don't want, right? We don't want everything frozen in amber. As historic preservationists, what we want to do is we want to bend the arc of change. The one consistent is change, right? So we just want to bend the arc of change and not be no, 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 no. And it's really easy for opponents to historic preservationists to say, well, they're just, NIMBY, not in my backyard, they're obstructionists, they're old fuddy-dudds, right? I mean, let's just be frank about what some of the impressions can be in the broader community. Tours, you do tours.
We've done, I think it's 6 or 7. Have we done 7 yet? We've done about, I know we've done 6, at least 6.
The Salisbury tour was 30% of my annual budget. It was huge. It was big as China.
It's our biggest revenue source.
Yeah. Do programming on skills and trades. You got a leading window rehabber in Brevard. You got another one in Swananoa. Get those fellas to come out here. Show people, over 2 hours how to do a window sash. Everybody shows up saying, I'm gonna learn how to do my window sash. They do like 2, and they go, screw this, I'm gonna hire somebody. So it's, it's mutually beneficial, but nonetheless, you're still putting out the technical aspects of how preservation can work. Endangered properties work. This is what we primarily focus on at PNC. We're the animal shelter of historic places, okay? I'm not in the general marketplace, rarely. If we get a gift of real estate that's, not necessarily historic, but we're just getting it because a donor wants to help fund the nonprofit, I'll hire an agent. That's not, I don't need to do that. Ours, and go to our website. We've got newsletters. Who's been to the website? Who's a member? Okay, that's my only ask right there. You will see that our buildings are derelict. You will see that nobody else wants these buildings. We're the interveners in most cases, and we can go more in depth with that today with questions or as things progress. Survey. Okay, so folks, who's familiar with the survey that's going on right now? So very few people in the room.
Our committee is. We talk about it. Our committee is familiar with it.
So this is me telling you to raise your hand. Who's familiar with the survey effort that's going on? Okay. All right. So this is not a surveyor with a transit finding corners for a lot, right? This is getting out into the field and identifying what you have, what's actually there. You don't know what to preserve until you actually know what you have. And you've got to go into this, in my opinion, with a very open mind. Again, it's important because it's architecture, it's age, it's scarcity, it's association with an individual, right? That's called the George Washington slept here model, right? It might be a piece of crap building, but Cincinnati slept there or whatever. Or how about the motel where Martin Luther King was shot, right? Hundreds of them across the country. But that place is a National Historic Landmark, right? So don't overlook the places just because they're plain. We've
What
done,
about, can I ask you this quick question? What about if it's a local, like a local, person that we, is historic here, but might not be outside of Saluda?
what I say is you want to save the places that are important to the people in the community. Okay, so it's not, don't be distracted by the George Washington slept. By the way, I'm sure there's tons of places that say that. You know, I mean, slept all day, right? You know? But so don't let that analogy distract you. It's not like it. We're talking about a small community. There are people that are very important to this small community that nobody else has ever heard of, right? What I was going to say, we've done mill villages. We've done 4 mill villages across the state. Edenton, Gastonia, Burlington, Durham. There's this movie called, it's the bow and arrow movie, Hunger Games, right? They shot at a place called Henry River Mill Village. It's right there off of I-40. We're in negotiations with the current owner to rehabilitate that place.
If y'all haven't seen that, you should go see it now while you can
Before we actually, it's going to be an incredible
Fascinating.
before and after.
Yeah.
Right. So I got off track. Survey. You know, open your eyes, learn about survey. You got the chair of the committee. You got several committee members that are aware of it. The survey, the committee needs to hear from you about the historic places that they don't know about, or about the historic places that the architectural historian that's engaged in the survey doesn't know about. They've got to hear from y'all about those places. And, you know, don't be shy about it. Again, it doesn't have to be the Biltmore House, right? You know, I want to make sure that, if it's in Polk County, I'm not even sure, but the ruinous motel down here on the side road that's, you know, real derelict, I would have that on the survey. I've got copies. This is a neighborhood survey of Albemarle Park in Asheville. This is a countywide survey of Rowan County, okay? The big book I'm not going to raise. It's statewide. It's not comprehensive. It's kind of the highlights. This is a survey of the architecture of Douglas Ellington. No, not Douglas Ellington, the other guy. Richard Sharp Smith, Biltmore House, the Basilica downtown Asheville, that sort of thing. So they can be thematic. Surveys can be thematic. They can focus on one type. In Charlotte, we did a survey of mid-century modernism, right? We've done African American historic resource surveys, that sort of thing. You're in the middle of a survey, and it needs to be as robust and identify as many places that you think necessary and important. And I think I probably just talked about most of these slides because I'm not paying attention. It is typically led by the state. That was the meeting in Columbus. Surveys can be scalable. You can do a street survey, neighborhood, town, county, boom, 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 boom. That's why I brought these other sections. This is, you know, the neighborhood, the county, et cetera, et cetera. I need to get moving real quick. What'd I just say? Okay? And it's, at the end of the day, it's the most effective when it is visualized. You don't necessarily have to produce a publication. A dead tree copy is what they call them today. You don't necessarily have to do that. You can do a fundraiser to produce it. This was done by the nonprofit. This was done by the neighborhood association. The big one was done by us. As the end product from SHPO is not going to be a publication. It's going to be a stack of files. And it'll be visualized by SHPO on their GIS. Okay, so, yeah, I know it's overwhelming. The blue dots are National Register. The purple are local designations, local districts. It's called HPO Web. You zoom right into the county, right into the street. You can find the parcel owner. You can find the acreage. You can find the tax value. The green is only surveyed, but not designated in any way. This is an incredibly robust tool. Here's an example that PNC uses internally to give you an idea of our 900 properties across the state. You can tell it's a little simpler, you know, it's a Google map where we've dropped these little pins in, but you know, I'm I pull over on the side of the road, I open my phone and I zoom in and I click on, these properties that I'm going to buy. I can drive by to make sure they're still there and all that sort of thing. But visualizing the results of the survey are very important because that's what helps connect the layperson, the general public, with the preservation movement. Otherwise, it's going to sit on a shelf in a binder and nothing's going to happen with it.
Jack, question about the survey. I understand are they doing it in phases this time again? I know we talked about phases.
My understanding is they're doing it in phases, and we were successful in nudging to focus on Saluda first. But it's a countywide survey, is my understanding.
Okay.
And it was also, it failed to launch, I don't know, 2 years ago?
Right.
With
They weren't, the state office wasn't satisfied with the contracted work.
Unsuitable,
But it's still on their website when you take it down.
I'll let you handle that.
Okay.
Make it consumable, make it accessible. There will be a constant evolution, okay? This is a movement of loss, okay? It is, things are gonna be lost, right? Just gonna have to resign yourself to that. Pick your battles. You can't pick your battles till you have a good survey, all right? And then you can leapfrog from that for National Register designations, either districts or individual sites, or if there's an appetite for it, either at the local level or at the county level, you can set up a Historic Preservation Commission and you can start doing local designations. That gives you some more teeth. Local designations can help slow down demolition. National Register does not offer any real protection, all right? It's 99% honorific. We can get wonky about the 1%. We're not going to do that today. Local designation helps. It's design review at the local level. It's 365-day demolition delay.
Suppose you have a house, 1885, it's pristine, hadn't had much done to it, and they want to tear it down. Is there anything as citizens we can do?
Two effective preservation tools relative to demolition. One is a local designation, and that is an ordinance that's passed by the unit of local government that has created the Historic Preservation Commission, either Polk County or Saluda, okay? Once that commission is created, you can designate that property by local ordinance, and that will invoke design review over potential changes to the exterior primarily. Some communities do some interiors. But it will not prevent demolition. It will only delay it by 365 days. The other way to do it is by an easement. A conservation easement is what's commonly known, especially in our natural resources here in the mountains, but we call them preservation easements. These are agreements between two private parties, has nothing to do with local government or any designation, but an owner donates an easement to Preservation North Carolina, and basically what they're doing is they're donating the right to demolish the house to us. Are we going to demolish it? No, but if we own that right, can anybody else demolish it?
No.
That's the only way in the state of North Carolina, property rights state, that's the only way in the state of North Carolina to permanently prevent demolition. Every other government designation in the state does not provide that level of protection.
And that might be something for your 1885 house if your current owners are willing to do that before it's sold.
And that simple map, that simple PNC map, all of those points on that map are permanently protected with our easements. Okay?
Jack, just clarify about these easements that you're talking about. It doesn't prohibit the existing property owner who has the property on the market to sell it
No.
and make money. It just says that they're going to sell it to an individual that will agree to protect and restore or properly restore the property. So it's not taking away the value of the property or the rights of the new owner. The new owner just has to be preservation minded.
That's right. It can limit the market because you got to find a preservation buyer. Got to find somebody as crazy as all of us in this room, right? If in our past recent kerfuffle, if the easement had been in place on that property, the buyer would have been made aware of that and would have been given the opportunity to either continue to move forward or to walk away because they had different plans.
And we put great effort towards trying to make that happen, and it didn't happen.
In the past,
Just for the
right.
record.
And then what do these pillars generate and create? With all of them in place, you get this preservation persona. And it's what you feel when you walk on the sidewalks in Charleston or Savannah or New Orleans, in the quarter. You feel it automatically. You feel it in Biltmore Village. You feel it in Glencoe Mill Village. You know, there are no lint heads anymore in North Carolina, right? There is no more textile industry. That is a dead culture. Euphemistically, the lint heads of the textile industry, those might as well be Greeks, right? And their little 400 square foot mill houses are still there to tell the story of that dead culture, right? That's the persona. You feel it right when you walk into the place.
Like you said, you walk into it. Can they move the houses?
The easement would not allow for the relocation of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. That relocation is kind of the last ditch effort, really, right before demolition. Somebody, take your notes, look up the Historic Landmarks Commission for Mecklenburg County, and you'll see a mercantile building, two-story mercantile building, just like that one in the center, going down the road that was moved like 2 or 3 days ago. But that's Charlotte. I worked for Charlotte. Charlotte's notorious for, there's a lot's been torn down in Charlotte.
Like Charleston.
This persona, if anybody has been to, is it 30A down in Florida, and you go west out of, what's that beach that used to be the party beach or whatever, ECB, what's it called? Yeah, no, on the other side, going down the Panhandle, you'll see these neighborhoods called Rosemary and Alley. And it's a product of what's known as the new urbanism, right? They're creating new, what we would otherwise be trying to save. Sometimes it can be a little cartoonish because it's like this European village in the Panhandle of Florida, which doesn't make any sense. But that's again, another contemporary example of this persona. You know when you're in a place that has a sense about it, right? And you know when you're in a place that only has 4 models of homes, and there's 2,000 of them. It's pretty easy to tell. Again, only constant is change. We want to bend the arc. We want to manage change. And that's where the integration with other movements, including planning and ordinance development, comes in. Promoting, guide new development. Influence the UDO. I've already said most of these things. All right. Can I get 10 more minutes?
Yeah, you're good.
All right. Ready? Okay, this is 7th grade, 8th grade, Law of Conservation of Energy, right? Can't be created nor destroyed, it's only converted from energy at rest to energy at motion or in reverse, right? Just goes one way or the other, right? So, this is embodied energy. This is a brick. It's a terrible picture, but it's embodied energy. So what happens to put, this is energy, right? Full of it, full of energy. These are probably masonry walls. Every unit in this wall has some amount of energy. Well, how much does it actually have? Well, when they burned the oil to operate this digger to get the clay out of the ground, they injected energy from the petroleum into the clay that they dug out of the ground. Then they burned petroleum to haul it, right? Had to fill up, had to get some energy. Where'd the energy come from? We finally found it, right? We keep digging. And we're extracting energy. Rightly or wrongly, this is our history. Right? We've not created it. We've not destroyed it. We've only converted it from one direction or the other. With me? Does this sound familiar? Okay. So, again, we're hauling that clay. We're forming bricks. We're firing it. When that hand was forming that brick, it was injecting energy from the dinner the night before. This is a wood kiln. Today, what do they burn? Nat gas. They're converting nat gas, that energy, and they're injecting it into that brick, which makes it strong, right? Then you got to haul the brick somewhere. You got to get it down the road. You're injecting energy. This is one of the most efficient forms of transportation, by the way, right? So they're using very little energy to move it, but they're still injecting energy into that brick as they move it. And it gets put in the wall. But wait a second. We still have more energy. We've got to figure this part out. There's energy happening right there. So the mason wakes up. The mason eats its Wheaties. Calories. Right? In the form of Wheaties. The mason converts that, puts the brick in the wall, builds our buildings. That's called embodied energy. Okay? We are surrounded, our historic built environment is surrounded by energy. And I'm not talking about the green gizmos and the LEED and all of that stuff. Great, let's make them work together. They're not mutually exclusive. The LEED designation for energy efficiency. They're not mutually exclusive. Let's integrate them both into historic preservation, but let's not tear it down, right? What happens now? We haul the debris. We haul it. We have to get gas to haul the debris. More energy, right? But now the building's not being used, but it is being stored. All of the energy of that building that was torn down has been stored somewhere else. And it's completely inaccessible, except for maybe some methane that's going to throw off from time to time, right? It just goes away. We don't have to worry about it anymore. Historic preservationists were the environmentalists before the environmentalists, right? The movement in America started in the early 1800s. It really got a kick in the pants with the Mount Vernon Ladies Association. You will find across the country that the preservation movement is often started, led by, charged by very powerful women. And then alternative lifestyles are right behind them. They go into these neighborhoods that nobody else would go into, that everybody abandoned, white flight in the 60s and 70s. They decay, then you get pioneers going back into these historic neighborhoods. That's what I got. Questions for any of that? So we want to do some engagement, if we can, about your thoughts about preservation in Saluda, or if you have questions about the survey process.
One
Yes.
question about that survey. Did they send out notices to the public? How were people to know about that?
The best of my knowledge, they contacted the city, they contacted locals, contacted us. They do have a letter. I'm not sure. I mean, it was in the Tryon Daily Bulletin, and there was a meeting in Columbus. It was on our Facebook. It's been on our Facebook page continually.
Okay.
But as far as I don't know 100% of all their marketing.
Yeah, and it's not going to be on a billboard out at the interstate. And I know that sounds like a smart-ass response, but I'm being kind of. It's what it is an issue of engaging the general public.
Right.
It's the same as whether or not we've got time to go to the city council meeting or the planning board meeting and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And this is part of getting that word out.
See, your house isn't in the city limits, is it? Or is it? It is. Okay. I can recommend that. Are you interested in having them?
There's no
It's not
implications
over.
of being included in the survey.
No,
I want to let you know that.
Yeah, I just wondered if
Okay.
it was a general meeting.
I mean, some guy like me might come up to you if you get in the survey and go, hey, you've got a great house. I want to protect it. Yes.
Most everybody knows who I am. I'm on the planning board, and we just did a presentation to the Historic Saluda Committee yesterday on what the city feels that needs to be done. Very much of it has to do with the survey that you were talking about. I wish I could stay. I've got another meeting at 10:30, and so get Cindy to. I've been talking to Cindy for 2 months.
Yeah, and I'd like to. I want to talk to you.
So
I need to talk
she
to
Get
her.
is
her
just
to
so-
catch you up, because the
But,
city
okay.
is very aware of so much of what you talked about.
Oh, good.
And,
Are you saying I just wasted my time?
well,
And just so you know,
we're on
she is my primary contact as
Yeah.
chair of the committee for historic preservation in this community.
I started working
Cindy's-
on this right after Crystal Springs for the planning board.
Yep,
And it's really interesting that I came up with so much of what you are saying today, and Cindy and I have talked about for the last 2 months.
you just born with it.
And it's wonderful. You'll love
Well,
it.
yeah, and I think we have a really good start with our
Yeah.
comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I'm
We are
sorry I
working
have
with
to
the
leave,
planning
but I have
board.
another meeting.
Okay, thank you for coming out, I
Thank you,
appreciate
Glenn.
it.
We'll talk.
Okay.
Okay.
It's so exciting. Other questions?
I have a funny story, because I always, talking about looking at those bricks and the energy and everything. A lot of you know my other half is very interested in automobiles, so we were in Spartanburg recently, and I can't think of the race car driver's name, but his building had burnt down. So Mark picks up a bunch of these bricks, and he lists them on the internet, and there are people that want to pay $80 a brick, plus shipping.
I've got some.
Sounds like a good fundraiser, right?
So in case you wonder what the bricks are in front of our house. But obviously, that's kind of a wonky preservation.
Who lives in an old house? Yeah.
Oh, I did.
Yeah. So you may think that it's redundant, you may think that it's going to be obvious to the surveyor, but I think that for the purposes of being diligent and making sure that the survey really, the results are as strong and robust as possible, make sure that you put your name in or your property in. They're not going to go every single place, right? They're not going to walk every single road. And the issue with the mountains is all those dark hollows, right? They're going to have limited time, and they're going to be worried about getting shot or whatever, right? So they're going to be places that they do not identify, and they're going to need the help of the community.
I will tell y'all, and Jack may not know this, but she contacted me, and we spent hours and hours on my golf cart cruising Saluda, and I got overwhelmed, they got overwhelmed, and then I realized we covered a lot, but I realized how much we couldn't cover because of just time and energy.
Yeah.
They came back, I'm not sure what they covered this time. They walked the streets this time, but I do think that we gave them a very good idea of where our historic properties are. Probably a little more information than they wanted, but we went down
It's
the
better
main.
than not.
Yeah, we went. I think I think Saluda has a very good start with this survey.
Yeah.
Because everyone
That's
is so interested. But if you want to email me and let me know of a house that you want to make sure is included, I can definitely write down the address and share it.
Don't worry about it being redundant.
No.
Another experience I have, working in the West. We rely on technology a lot. We've got these GIS systems, Google Street View, yeah. But the problem is there are some severe limitations to that coverage in the West. The Piedmont down east, pretty easy, right? You just jump in the car and go in a straight line for 6 hours. But getting up and down these roads, so there's limitations to that too. And I would imagine that the surveyor would probably, if they had time, they would probably try to throw some extra time into seeing some windshield views from the computer screen.
Speaking of bricks, I'm from Charleston, and my father was born in an old house, 1754. They tore it down. He bought a number of bricks and a couple of balustrades, and I've got some of those bricks
Yeah.
in my house now. And house before, I had 2 areas done with those bricks.
So you sparked something. There are organizations that have salvage programs. So if the demolition is going to happen, they'll rally volunteers. We've pulled up thousands of bricks off of a sidewalk on Chestnut Street in Asheville. But there's salvage operations, and there'll be manholes and doors for those crazy people that need that stuff for their house because it's missing a manhole, stuff like that. So that's another opportunity. Yeah.
I didn't say this when I stood up, I should have. There is an open house, did we mention that, at 11:30, or as soon as we leave here? An open house at this,
1854. It's 443 Shan Street.
okay, it's, if you want to see a house that really needs to be preserved, you need to visit this one, and it's, you know, it's open today, you can go through it, and I think Amy has some light refreshments.
You got your notes from when we walked through it?
There, in the office, but yes.
We did a curated tour
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, and it's spectacular.
It's
The
amazing.
fabric
it's
of that
beautiful.
building is really nice.
What they built with has survived. They built with cypress, all that survived. You know, that's a tight weed tree that termites don't want to get into.
Yeah.
So it's amazing, that's all I can
It's
say.
got hand planes sheeting on the
Yeah.
interior that
Art
probably came out of
pine.
another building or got moved in the house. The forensics of that house is pretty interesting. So what do y'all think is the appetite for these types of designations? Now, the National Register, again, provides no protection, no regulatory environment really to speak of unless you're going to be federally funded or federally permitted. If you're going to put a cell tower up in the backyard of a historic place, then you're probably going to have a problem if you're on the National Register. But other than FCC permit. But other than that, it's honorific in nature.
What about the tax credits? Did you mention that?
It does kick in the tax. So we have a rehabilitation tax credit in this for the state of North Carolina. Who pays income taxes in North Carolina? Not everybody in the mountains does, right? We got any Floridians that file in Florida, right? But there is a state rehabilitation tax credit for properties that for owner-occupied, non-income producing properties, there is a state tax credit to help offset the investment you need to make to rehabilitate the house. If it's an income producing property, whether it's on Main Street or it's a B&B or a rental, if it's an income producing property, then there is a federal tax credit, 20% of what you spend to rehab the house. And then a state tax credit depending on these economic zones that we have, 15 to 25%. I'm gonna guess Polk County is probably a tier 3, so you're probably gonna get the full, it's either 20 or 25%. So federal credit at 20%, state credit at 20 or 25. Coming back to you on the money you spend to rehab a property, if it's on the National Register, okay, if it's in a district or if it's individually listed, if it's one of those blue dots on that state map that I showed you. So that's a really important incentive.
Well, that is actually a project that we've been stewing on for a long time, and I think what this survey does is it gives us the kickstart
That's
to
right.
do that. And I did have a lengthy conversation with these ladies about what areas of Saluda should be possibly looked at first for historic
For
districts.
districts,
And we thought that it would be wise to consider Henderson Street area because of everything that happened with our issue that we had, because that would immediately give those property owners, if they're rehabbing, their state tax credits at least. And then I think they're possibly interested in income producing, so that would give them.
Unless they're paying taxes in California.
Oh,
But they'd
It's
still
so
be paying
nice.
taxes in
It's
Saluda,
south.
wouldn't they? If they
Talk
own
about
property
peace and
here.
pleasantness. What?
If they own property here, they'd still be paying local.
Property taxes, yeah.
But not income.
But that Floridian that spends 2 months in Naples, they're not paying, they're.
So if you're not paying income taxes,
Just depends on how they're set up.
okay.
How do we get there? We get the survey.
Is that ladies that I talked to yesterday, day before yesterday, taking pictures of my house?
Kelly, that's her,
Yeah.
that's the survey.
And then that's gonna be the baseline. And then from there, there'll be personal evaluations, personal decisions made by property owners, or encouragement from advocates or the state, or a really high-performing historic preservation commission to encourage you to pursue a National Register nomination for your property. If it's a district, if it's multi-property, right, there's 10 houses, 1,000 houses, that's gonna have an expense associated with creating the nomination, and it's just a matter of scale as to cost. An individual nomination for a property, for a house, is running, I'm gonna say, between $5,000 and $7,000 routinely.
What is a district usually?
It's gonna depend on how big it is. We are working to get the Canton paper mill on the National Register for redevelopment purposes. Look up American Tobacco Campus in Durham if you're not familiar with it. Okay, Canton became a bedroom community overnight, right? The stink is gone. The stink is gone. Right? So, and it's got lovely, relatively small houses that are gonna be much more affordable, 20 minutes from Asheville, right? So we're working with the town to get the mill on the National Register to hopefully incentivize. We won't save it all. I mean, it's like zombie apocalypse in some of those places, but big chunks of it will be saved, hopefully, and redeveloped. But the Canton Mill National Register nomination is going to be like $25,000, and that's 150
One
acres.
of the reasons we did our home tour this year was to have some money to help us get started with a nomination for district.
Yeah, and so you get on the survey, then you do what's called a study list application. Spend $500, maybe get a grant.
Yeah, we're gonna go after
To
that.
do a study list application to the state. This is that preliminary vetting process so that you don't spend $6,000 on something that's not gonna get listed on the National Register, right? You send them preliminary information, the state reviews it and says, yes, proceed, or no, you don't have anything.
So with all of this, is that the same thing where you had to take the purchase price off of part of it? I mean, like we own things we bought for less money. We also own things that we rent out as.
When you say things, do you mean real property or do you
Yeah.
mean personal property like Granny's China?
Like the old library, the Woods House.
Okay, right, okay.
And we rent them at below market rate to our detriment. But anyhow, so they're technically income producing, and so that doesn't, anyhow, that.
If those properties get on the National Register and if they remain income producing, you're gonna get a 20% rebate on the money you spend to rehabilitate them.
Wow.
Now, that's a very broad statement, and there's a lot of nuance embedded in that, but that's the general thing. Okay?
Are you familiar with the tobacco building in Charleston?
Not right, it's not, is that the one that, is it near the Harris Teeter?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
They went in and rehabbed it, and it's now apartments.
Yeah, yeah.
Condos, and it's really unbelievable.
Textile mills make great apartments. You know what else does? Historic schools. They're modular built, they're repetitive spaces. You know, a studio, one classroom, a 2-bedroom, 2 classrooms, punch a hole, swim. Very, very easy.
I showed a property down in Charleston that turned out to be my first grade classroom.
Yep, schools, hospitals, any of that modular scale is very easily convertible to residential.
I think it's real important to get one thing and then a question we have answered before we run out of time.
Yeah.
And then everybody can just continue to ask questions. But I want to know, it sounds like you have a lot of things, a lot of information that you need. And you'd like to know some real specifics about it, because we can dig down into like tax credits, we can dig down into National Register, we can dig down into easements and covenants. I mean, those are the kind of things we're thinking you might be interested in. But I wanted to hear today we haven't planned the next program in this series. We want to know what you think that should be. What do you think is something that's just burning topic for you?
The rest of the city, the connecting parts, why are we cutting down humongous trees? Why are we putting in a park that looks like it looks like it could go at Exxon? Why are we not doing the things that enhance the properties, and the properties enhance the experience for everybody, the mystery, the oldness, the cool feelings, the embodied bricks that we have in our community are trying to turn little parts of it into, I loved your phrase, a vinyl village. I loved that phrase. I'm very concerned about the things that go along with our community.
So basically land use, landmarks, disconnect
Yeah.
between the.
Smaller communities
Yeah.
generally, with some exception, generally do not have deep benches in their planning department. You know, I don't know about this one, but I'm working in one community where the town manager is the planner, is the code enforcement officer, you know, they just gotta change hats. But there are communities that figure it out anyway. But it really comes from input.
And that's potentially a presentation by the McCreary Park Committee or something that you might want to hear from them, because I'm not sure that's in our wheelhouse of, you know, as far as the land. I mean, that might be a land trust presentation, because, you know, they've got a lot of cool things going on. But as far as historic bricks and mortar properties, I mean, as far as what is it you want to know, I mean, I think it all is relevant, don't get me wrong, but as far as what we've talked about today, what kind of things, you're asking questions about tax credits and.
Well, that's just us, because we got onto that. That's not, I think that's pretty much gotta be a one-on-one, because it's
individual.
so, you know, people hear this part, oh, you can do this, and you can't, but, tax credits are an interesting and good thing, yeah.
They don't need
I
some
guess-
people.
It stimulates reinvestment
Right,
in the proper
but
setting.
that's not,
What about, I think because we're working on this, I think that, is more, as like historic districts on the National Register, I think is important, because the only historic district we have, we're sitting in, you know, downtown, Saluda. So, you know, maybe, because there's a lot of misconception about that. I mean, a lot of people think that if you do that, then you can be told what to do about your property. You're under some kind of jurisdiction when that's not true with a.
Unless you want to get the financial incentive. So if you're going after the carrot, you gotta play by the rules.
Well, that's true.
But if you're not going after the carrot, there is no building in this National Register district that's protected.
Well, the planning board has done some kind of commercial overlay or
Okay,
something.
good.
Glenn could have explained it, that where they put protection on
Yeah.
these buildings, and they actually have their
So
own
you-
historic district they've identified.
Your planning board
they change things,
your planning board is serving as your historic preservation
and
commission.
I don't have a vote.
And
But
that's.
they only do commercial.
But only commercial.
Only
That's,
commercial.
Yeah, that's, yeah, but, so, you know, it's not mixed messages, but I've heard that there's not an appetite politically or administratively for a local historic district or commission to be involved with such,
Districts, yes, but not commissions.
but not commissions.
Flat out, no commission is what I've been told.
Yeah, we have no teeth.
But meanwhile, the planning
But
board
the-
is serving as such for the commercial area.
But
So
the,
it's like, you're hearing two different messages is what I'm hearing.
Kelly, with the State Historic Preservation Office, has told me that at Polk County level, that they're wanting to do a countywide commission.
County can do it, I mean,
But the city of Saluda would have to
they have to sign
embrace
on.
it and
Yeah.
sign off on it.
They have to,
Right.
and it may be, if there's apprehension at the city level to do it, it may be because of budget. It may be because of staffing.
It is, it
If
is.
that's the case, then all they gotta do is sign off for the county, the Preservation Commission to do the work and then agree to the designations. If it's like most of my presentations, and it's not necessarily a question for me, it could be a question for Cindy, there's somebody in the room that hadn't asked a question, doesn't really wanna do it in front of everybody, that's fine. Make sure we get the question, and we can help you with, understanding, some of these nuances that we haven't dug into. Yes, ma'am?
I'm from Tryon, and I'm wondering if you would want to come talk with us and.
Yeah. Let's
Is
talk
that
about
present?
Hidden House too. See what happened with that house that just recently sold.
Oh, yeah, I don't really, we can talk, but, there are lots of other properties.
Yeah.
But I I guess we want some discussion. We need to do education and outreach. The commission has existed since 2010.
Are you on the commission?
I'm currently by default the chair.
Understand that.
And they have never done rules,
Oh,
which you gotta have.
gotta have, yeah,
And you have to have design.
yeah. The new land use
Guidelines.
law that passed 3 or 4 years ago, that was the work I did for Mecklenburg County was rolling in the new land use law that had huge implications on the
Right.
local commissions.
So anyway, we've done that now.
Good.
So, but now our problem is education and outreach, like
Yeah.
here. But we're looking at needing to talk to people who have come from many other places.
Yeah.
Some of whom think of historic preservation as being very limiting in
None of
terms
them
of
are
their.
entitled either, are they? Right.
Never. But, you know, they don't want anyone telling them
Yeah.
anything. So we as our design standards, we just adopted the federal, which is about as
Right,
loose
that's
as
as
we
easy,
can go.
yep, that's what we use.
Um,
All those properties on that map for PNC, we use the Secretary of the Interior
Yeah,
stamp,
that's
Secretary of the
pretty
National Park Service,
But
Secretary of the Interior
we
stamp.
still have a hard sell, I think.
Yeah.
We need to do a lot of outreach and education, as Saluda is doing, but in a bit of a different kind.
Yeah, let's do it. We'll just add a little more sugar to the Kool-Aid and they'll drink it.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
But no, people really are interested, they want to know what tax credits there are.
Yeah,
And, you know, the local, if you're going local, with local landmarks, there's a property tax.
50% property
Which is
tax
pretty
deferral
sweet.
for local landmarks.
But you can't designate every significant property,
and you gotta-
because you're gonna destroy your tax base.
And the politicians are gonna pick up the phone to the
Right.
tax assessor and go, don't let this happen, you know.
But then how do you convince neighborhoods of the benefits of being a historic district, local?
So most of the time it's a spark, most of the time it's a reaction to a loss. And
Which
if the
is-
loss
yeah.
happens and there's not outcry, then you wait for the next loss.
Yeah, that's why I suggested we start with Henderson Street because of our crisis
We're gonna
recently.
start with low-hanging fruit,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
Sir,
I was just wondering, you mentioned that the National Register listing is 98% honorific, and that you mentioned some tax credits you can get.
yeah.
What are the benefits of being in the National Register if it's 98% honorific?
With the pride in coming with being on the National Register, being recognized by the federal government as a place important to American history. The tax credit is an incentive for rehabilitation. That's about it. There is a residual effect in, you know, culturally speaking, when you've got either the little plaque next to the door that you pay for, right? Or you've got the brown signs on top of your street signs in your neighborhood that go, oh, you know, they come into town, hire the real estate agent, and they start driving around and they see the little sign toppers that say, what's Henderson neighborhood, whatever your neighborhood. And, you know, it says this is a special place. Is it smoke and mirrors? I don't really think so. I mean, I think there is the development of pride that can help in the preservation of the places. But technically, there's not a protection there. There's a slight protection when you do a tax credit project because most of the time you're gonna, for tax purposes, you're gonna carry that credit forward for a period of 5 years. And while you're taking that tax credit over those 5-year terms, you're not gonna tear the house down, but the 6th year, you can tear it down.
It was a huge incentive for the rehabilitation of Thompson's store. Huge. I mean, the man involved is very knowledgeable. He does this in Pensacola, Florida, so he knew all about this. He definitely Jennifer Cathy said he definitely took advantage of it. And made a difference. That's why we have Thompson's that looks like it does today. Those tax credits.
You know, I didn't do myself a decent service, or PNC a decent service, by talking more about the easements and the protective covenants. You know, if there's a dilapidated property in town that either the general marketplace doesn't want to deal with, or if we need to figure out approaches to property owners, we work with heirs properties, you know, that have 200 different heirs. We do a lot of that real in-depth stuff. again, animal shelter for historic properties, let me know about those places and let me see if I can start a conversation and try to get into those arenas to find the next new great steward of those important historic places. If you have owners of historic properties that want to, my classic example is, Granny knows she's gonna die, the kids aren't coming back to town, so she knows there's a chance from, somebody from Vermont moving to town that might not cotton to keeping the house. So she'll put an easement on the property before she passes, and to know, to rest easy forever, that the house won't be torn down. And so that's the easement program that we do. And those can be very simple. They can have impacts on marketing, right? They start to limit your market. But I would say, in the same token, or the same notion, that technically, yes, they limit the market, but that market is stronger and more passionate. They want the old, they're staying up at 3 o'clock in the morning on Circa Old Homes Facebook page, looking at $30,000 mansions in Iowa, right? Those are the folks.
Your book, the properties that you guys.
Yeah, so get a book.
market.
I think there's a few in the back. This one's old, so most of them may be gone. Oh no, there's no properties in this one. We changed the format. I sold a gymnasium in Lincoln. Surplus properties. Are there any properties that are owned by the city, by the town, by the county that they are not being good stewards of, that they need to relinquish?
We've got, I just need to talk to you about them. We've got one, maybe two, that may be under the what do they call it, the city
Well, we have a so
condemning them, abatement, what do you call it,
yeah,
abatement?
the nuisance abatement.
Nuisance
Where they've
abatement. We've
condemned
got
them.
one that's very historic that is in danger. It's very much like Crystal Springs was, but it's probably, I haven't been in it, so I don't know. I just hear it's really bad. Somebody's living in it though. But, there's a long story behind this house, but, I think that's a case of talking to you about, this is something he hasn't even mentioned and we don't have time for. And I don't know what your terminology is, but the pass-through where the property owner PNC can step in and purchase the property as a
Yeah,
pass-through?
option
to purchase.
And the real estate professionals will understand, but what we do, we have to mitigate risk. I don't have big, huge pots of money. So I'm not actually buying the property up front. I'm getting an option to purchase, and listen to it, option. The owner of the property is giving me the option to buy the property within 12 months for a fixed amount. It's my option. It's called a unilateral contract. The owner has to perform, but I don't have to. It's my option. Then I find a buyer that's staying up at 3 o'clock on our website. And they come to town, I get them under contract. At the same lawyer table, I buy the house from the owner, put my deed restrictions on it, and sell it to my new buyer. And that's mitigating risk for us because we work on a shoestring. I'm not making 3%, I'll tell you that. If I can pay the light bill, I'm happy because we also have fundraisers as a nonprofit, so the real estate isn't necessarily generating the revenue that would otherwise keep us operating.
So I do have a house I need to talk to you about with that.
Sandy, this just being a person sitting here who happens to be married to a real estate. It sounds like to me that this is the kind of thing that is tailor-made for a meeting that you tailor to real estate. That they understand the options that they have through him and through you to make a property more marketable to the person Joe Blow. I'm with Grayton on some of these open houses at the house, and I hear people come in. One of the first things they ask is about restrictions that have to do with preservation and tax credits that have to do with preservation.
So your buyers are knowing.
If your agents don't know that, then it doesn't help a bit. You need them in the mix to say there is you can get. It might cost you X amount,
but in return, you have tax credits for the next.
And Amy can attest to this, and if Loretta were here, she would attest to this. These program series, they were designed, we made a list of like our top 5 real estate agents. And we have representation from one here, and another one was invited, but it is, and it needs to probably be focused, because that was, with Crystal Springs, the real estate agents were really in the hot seat, right, Jack? So, yes, 100%, you bullseye.
And the other thing about agents
You have
is,
to title it, we don't want another Crystal Springs.
Well,
This is for you.
the city is wanting us to move on from that to Crystal Springs, so,
and the other thing the real estate agents have is a duty to perform, and that includes material facts, and that means getting it right. Or you're gonna get written up in the back of the bulletin, right? Nobody wants to be written up in the back of the bulletin. Or you don't wanna be at a closing table and have gotten it wrong, right? So that's, I'm not saying that to scare you, it's easy to, it's just a couple of lessons, but that's easy to do. Great, I know I'm gonna catch up with somebody after the meeting, but we're, I think, overdue. What?
Nancy had a good suggestion, we needed to schedule the next meeting, but that might be something that you and I need to talk about.
Do you have to have me back, or if you wanna find somebody,
Well, yeah,
A new
and
voice.
I'm here, and
bring a friend.
I wrote down historic districts, easements, covenants, options to purchase, and make sure real estate agents are at the table if possible.
And abatement issues,
Abatement
if you don't
issues.
mind, and surplus properties, if there are any.
Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am, thank you,
Yes.
I appreciate it. I've got business cards, and there's these little brochures, they kind of tell you what we do. A snapshot of some of our work. There are some properties that, the properties that are gonna be highlighted in this one are probably ones we've sold. We have we do a statewide preservation conference, it's next month in Rocky Mountain, Tarboro. Oh my gosh, look at that, there's a remittance envelope for anybody who wants to join. It's not a week-long thing, it was just a 5-minute. But anyway, make sure you get one of these, and if you want to peruse the surveys.
If I could say that real quick, Elena mentioned trees being cut down, and that's a big passion of mine, is to preserve the trees. So do you have a network of arbor associations or
So
groups that help?
that's a really good point. On our website, we have, it's a business membership kind of thing. It's called the Preservation Associates Network. It's under resources, I think, on our website. And that'll have contractors, and if there are arborists, it'll be on that list. Our protected properties, the trees that measure greater than 12 inches in diameter, 4 feet above the ground, are all protected unless we get a letter from an arborist that there's a disease issue or there's a specific threat to the built environment, because I like non-living things more than I like living things, I'll just be frank about it. But we do protect the trees. Now there are examples of municipal ordinances for tree protection, and if I'm saying things you already know, I apologize, but this is a Mother May I state. So a local government can't adopt a law unless Raleigh says they can. Does that make sense? So in Raleigh, there's this carte blanche, not necessarily carte blanche, but a list of statutes that local governments can adopt, but they can't do it from whole cloth themselves. So there in Raleigh, there are tree conservation ordinances that other cities have adopted. So that might be something to look at. That would, I would engage probably a local General Assembly representative. Their staff member can do that kind of research for you. I don't know who I don't know who's on the delegation here. So John Ager's office, or he's not even in the assembly anymore. But I'd call the office of a representative and talk to their staff person about what those ordinances may be. And then you can come to the town with the examples and the communities that have done it, so that they're not scared to death that they're the only ones that have done it.
We tried with Tree City.
Riding through town, you can see the stumps that they cut down.
Yeah.
Our community has a lousy tree ordinance, like, we're allowed to cut, and we don't care about anything, basically.
And there are communities that have, sorry, I'm gonna say it, local historic districts that have, embedded in the local historic district, there are tree protections too. There's gonna be some limitations, but, it's the animal is out there, you just kinda have to find it and then convince the local jurisdiction to adopt it.
Yeah, that's the hard part.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what we need to do.
It's after 11:30 and I know I have professionals that have to go in the house, right?
Thank you so much, Jack, it's been wonderful.
Thank you.
Absolutely wonderful, appreciate it. Be sure, if you don't know where the house is, ask Amy.
Go
Or
from
ask me.
town